everyone. My name is Rick Farron, and welcome in to Jehovah's Witness World News. Now, many know of the Jehovah's Witnesses for the most part. They consider them nicely dressed, well-groomed men, women, and children, ringing your doorbell for the most part on Saturday afternoons, or Saturday mornings as well. And they have an apocalyptic message, a message of doom for mankind. Now they're everywhere today. They've upped the ministry. You'll now see them in train stations. You'll see them in flea markets, airports, and even in front of Walmart and Sam's Club stores. They're very, very aggressive in their ministry, and their goal is to recruit you into the Jehovah's Witness organization, the Watchtower Society. Now, the magazines the Jehovah's Witnesses use in their proselytizing work, you've seen the magazines, I'm sure, the Awake magazine, and of course, the Watchtower magazine. These magazines are published by the Watchtower Society in New York. And for the most part, we've heard that they are perhaps the largest producer of religious publications in the world. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses started, actually the Watchtower Society got started back in the 1800s. And today they claim to have 7 million members. But as of late, there's a dark shadow that's hovering over the Watchtower Organization, the internet, Facebook, YouTube, and a number of books written by past Jehovah's Witnesses are telling a story that's different than the message of the witnesses when they come to your door. The pristine image of the witness is now being tarnished. They have a very sinister, dark side. Many are now considering Jehovah's Witnesses as a very dangerous and a destructive cult. I want to introduce to you today a man that was in the Jehovah's Witness organization for many years. We're going to be interviewing him. The story he's going to tell is quite interesting. It's a story perhaps that you're not going to believe if you're a witness listening for the first time. But please listen intently and see what this man has to say. My colleague here, Chelsea Danvers, will also be working with me today, and she's familiar with the Jehovah's Witnesses as well. So Mark Palo, we're so glad that you could be with us today, Mark.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, Rick.
Well, you know, we've been trying to put this together for a while, and we've been trying to put this together for a while, Mark, and now we have the opportunity to do so. Mark, for the most part, let's just start with a series of questions. How was it that you were first connected or became involved with the Jehovah's Witness religion?
Simply, I was born into it. My father was served at their Bethel headquarters, which is the Watchtower's world headquarters in Brooklyn. He served at Bethel for 13 years. My mother was a coal porter, which is the forerunner of what the witnesses today call a pioneer or a special pioneer. She used to ride around in a sound truck with these enormous speakers on the roof and play Judge Rutherford or Joseph Rutherford's records of his speeches. And like I said, I was born. They were witnesses when I was born, and I was born into it.
So you're familiar with them now.
Do you have any brothers or sisters, Mark?
No, I'm the only child. My father actually was born in 1897.
Oh, wow.
So he was close to 50 when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
you know, I was the only child.
So how long were you in the organization, Mark?
Good 40, 45 years.
Well, that's enough time to really get a sampling of who they are, right?
Oh, yeah, well, see, I wasn't just raised as an average witness. Because of my father's connections and all that, I mean, we used to hobnob at my parents' house with like the branch overseer of Finland, the branch overseer of South Africa, the branch officers they call them, and all the upper echelon of the Watchtower. They'd come over to my father's house, drink his booze, eat his food, and they'd, you know, hang out. And so I got to see a lot more than the average witness child growing up.
So you were like in the Jehovah's Witness clique?
Well, yeah, clique or whatever, but actually, honestly, the upper echelon does not think too much of the rank and file. In fact, they would make disparaging remarks about them and things like that, and that sort of struck me as wrong. I mean, I was taught that everyone in the congregation was my brother and my sister.
Right.
And you didn't treat them with that kind of disrespect, but these men high and mighty. They just said what they did. They said what they said.
Well, you know, Mark, we've got a lot of probably Jehovah's Witnesses listening into this. And, of course, their first thing that pops up in their mind is that maybe you're not telling us the truth. But that's why we wanted to bring you on this television broadcast, so that we could get the word out about the witnesses. And certainly they could challenge us at any time if they like.
Oh, yeah.
We're not sitting here just spewing information out. At any point, any one of the witnesses out there feels that what we're saying is not correct, we'll give you the information on how to get a hold of us at the end of the program.
Right.
Now, as a young person, Mark, were you a loyal, faithful Jehovah's Witness?
As I think of it now, I would say no, but then back then I thought I was. But I realized something later on, that I was actually more in fear because of the apocalyptic vision that the witness has, that, you know, if you do wrong, you're going to die at Armageddon, vultures are going to eat you, pick your bones, and all these other things, and also fear of the organization, because it was a big brother mentality, still is a big brother mentality. And so as a young child, young man, I don't know if it was out of respect or belief, or most likely I think fear, that I towed the line.
Interesting, Mark, that you're willing to come out and speak about this. Many people who leave the Watchtower Organization, they kind of go underground. They're not willing to come forward. The Watchtower Organization can create problems in their life, and we'll talk about that as we go downstream in the interview. But the Jehovah's Witness Organization, Mark, as you know and Chelsea knows, they claim they're the only true religion on the planet, and they call it the truth. Now, as a young person, Mark, did you ever consider the Jehovah's Witnesses to be the only true religion, the truth?
Actually, no, because I always had this one question. Okay, back then when I was younger, there were far less than 7 million witnesses in the world. Let's say 2 or 3 million. Okay, we're talking 50s, 1950s, 60s. And you've got 30 some odd million or billion Catholics and so many millions of Protestants. I would say to myself, how could these people all be wrong and only the select few have the only truth? You see, I didn't say the truth, the only truth. That's what the witnesses claim to have, the only truth. And I just couldn't fathom that. You know what I mean? I was a very prodigious reader when I was a kid. I mean, I was reading Aldous Huxley when I was like 13, 14 years old. So I was into philosophy and stuff, and, you know, I just questioned.
So something wasn't clicking.
I just had a problem with it. I just, you know, but like I said, out of fear, I towed the line.
Very good. Now, did you have any special positions or assignments with the Watchtower Organization, that is the Jehovah's Witnesses? Were you, as a young person, I know we spoke before, they gave you special privileges. What were some of those, Mark?
Well, first of all, I was always interested in radio and television, electronics, mechanical things. And I considered it a great privilege when at the age of 13 I was a toolbox carrier for another witness at these assemblies. I would follow him around, faithfully carrying his toolbox, handing him tools like a surgeon when he would hook up speakers or microphones or whatever. And I did that. I had to, you know, sort of like the rookie. I had to learn the ropes. So like till I was about 16, I was a toolbox carrier. And then I moved up to an installer, where I was said that they'd give me a diagram and say, go put 30 speakers out in front of a row of these seats. I'd wire them up. And then that graduated. As I got older and more educated, I went and got my broadcast engineering license, my first class FCC ticket. I then designed and built the 3-camera switching system with a complete RF distribution. RF distribution meaning that anybody with a TV set on channel 3 hooked to the cable that we ran around because the witnesses have their assemblies at large stadiums or arenas. And in remote departments, I couldn't see the stage. They could see the program on a TV. And I designed and built that, and the witnesses copied that and made several copies of that system for use across the United States. I was in administration, I was in charge of it, and then things started to fall apart.
Well, I'm glad you speak specifically about certain events and some of the details of your engineering at these assemblies. It shows credibility, Mark. And we know there was a sound room. There was obviously facilities that were utilized at these conventions to broadcast it in some cases, or at least to put it over a PA system. Now, you said you went to some of these large conventions. You did grow up in New York. We'll get to that in a little while. But you did get to some of these large conventions they had right near the world headquarters, like a Yankee Stadium and what have you. But you must have got to see some of the big Watchtower officials from time to time.
Oh, all the time. All the time, especially if it started to pour rain. They would usually come in the room where the mixing board was for the sound and continue their speech because it was just pouring rain too much. And that happened several times. And they would also wait off stage, and sometimes if you were on camera or whatever, they'd be sitting right there, and you'd say hello to them, and they'd say hello back, and they get to know you after a while. And they knew me anyway because of my father. So, it wasn't like I was like, ooh, look at him, he's there. I knew who he was, and he knew me. So.
Well, you must have heard some of the prophecies that they spoke about. I remember, too, talking with you in the past. You mentioned about President Freddie Franz and what he mentioned concerning. Give us the year, Mark.
Frightful Freddie. 1975. I was just then, I was 25 years old. I was in charge of the TV department, which is a young age for witnesses to be in charge of something like that. And Freddie Franz got up and gave the final comments. At every assembly, they always have an hour talk, final comments. And this man ranted and raved that come that fall, it was the end of the 1,000 years, 1975 was coming, Armageddon was going to occur, we should be all prepared for it. It was definite. And now today the Watchtower denies that it was ever said. I wish I had a tape of that speech.
Well, we do have a tape of it. In fact, any of the listeners, if they would like to get a hold of that tape or at least hear it, at the end of the program, they could email me, and I'll make sure that they get that, Mark. But we'll continue on here. You claim, Mark, that something very evil happened to you when you were a young boy at the Watchtower headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. Now, I'm just going to suggest to the people that might have some young ones around listening to this program, it's a little sensitive, it's a little troubling, so I'm going to suggest that perhaps they could bring the children out of the room at this point.
Okay.
So, give them a couple of seconds here. So what are you going to talk about, Mark, concerning this very disturbing moment as a young one in the Jehovah's Witness organization?
Okay, well, I have to preface everything by telling you that my mother and father both spoke, wrote, and read fluently the Finnish language. Okay, and the Watchtower Society didn't have any Finnish-speaking people in Brooklyn. They had them at their branch office in Finland, but not in Brooklyn. And there was a lot of correspondence from Finland in the Finnish language. So, extremely sensitive matters within the organization. And I remember my parents sitting there and translating it into English, and many times they had to take a trip down to Brooklyn Bethel. I would go with them, and they would be with the service department or the writing department doing a translation. And sometimes it was vice versa. They would give it an answer from the service department, and my parents would have to translate it into Finnish and send it off to this individual. So anyway, while I was down there with them on one occasion, I was out wandering around a little bit, and this man came to me, took me to his room, and he sexually molested me in Bethel. And for years, I didn't know his name. I did not know who he was, but I used to see him get up on a stage and give public talks and everything. And then, I don't know, I was about 40, 45 years old, and somebody mailed me some photographs with the names. And there was Percy Chapman, Leo Greenlees, and several others. I saw Leo Greenlees' picture, and I said, that's the man. Now I have a name to go with the face. And Percy Chapman was also kicked out of the Watchtower. Nothing was ever done to Leo Greenlees. In fact, he was never disfellowshipped. They just shipped him out to the Midwest somewhere. And it was also on record that he had molested more than just me.
Oh, no.
But, and this is not making a comment on a lifestyle or anything or judgmental. Percy Chapman was considered a homosexual. realize the witnesses are a very, very fundamental Bible-thumping group. Okay, I won't call them Christian because I don't believe they are Christian. So they go by what the Bible says, the condemnation of homosexuality. So if you are, and you're in the Watchtower, you're out. If they find out. Okay, I'm not making a judgment call, but that's the way they are because of the fundamentalism. But that's what occurred to me then at another occasion. One thing the witness parents, even today, have to learn is it's not safe to send your kids with just members of the congregation because they're Jehovah's Witnesses. I was on a picnic in Central Park when a nephew of one of the overseers of the congregation molested me again. Okay, and then I never saw the guy again because he was visiting. But twice, and nothing was done. And first of all, I never said anything. I was terrified. I was terrified into silence. Never told my parents. Never went to anybody. Lived with it for 40 years plus. And it created a lot of issues, which we're going to get into later.
Well, no doubt about it. And again, for the audience listening to us here today and viewing us, they're saying to themselves out there, if they are active Jehovah's Witnesses, they're saying, I don't believe this. This sounds kind of outlandish. This sounds way out there because, you know, we're not really in an organization that has this type of behavior. But as of late, as we mentioned at the onset of the program, the internet, Facebook, forums online, YouTube, is exposing the witnesses. And all of a sudden, Mark, there seems to be a great deal of hype and at least ongoing bad press for the Watchtower concerning pedophilia in the Watchtower. And some have actually even called it a pedophile paradise. Would you agree to that?
Oh, absolutely. I would totally agree with the pedophile paradise because the witnesses try to skirt the law, even where it's state mandated, that there any kind of incidents of pedophilia is reported to the authorities. They also have standing orders for the elders that their records, the records that the congregation keeps on each publisher, because don't forget, when you're a witness, there's a record card with your name on it. You're not allowed access to it. You can't read it. You can't see it because it's considered confidential. But they know that this guy was a pedophile. He moves to another congregation. They don't notify. And they also believe in the two-witness rule. What man admits to pedophilia or whatever? You know, you don't admit to the crime, so you don't have two witnesses.
Yeah, let's just talk for a second about that two-witness rule, Mark. That is one of the reasons why there are a lot of Jehovah's Witness pedophiles that aren't really found out about. One way the Watchtower Society covers them up, they are going to use a scripture here. They're going to come in specifically with Matthew, I believe it's Matthew the 18th chapter, I believe verse 16. And they're going to say that according to the Bible, in order to convict someone of a heinous evil act, there has to be two witnesses.
Right.
Now, the problem we have with pedophilia is who would be witnessing this.
Right.
So if we have a man, a Jehovah's Witness man, that sexually molests a person in their religion or anyone, who is the witness that's going to testify against him? There was no one there to see it.
And then I ask also you a question in reverse. What man wants to tell people that he was sexually molested as a kid? It's not an issue that you're proud of. You go, oh, look at me, and beat your chest. You know, it's something you really rather keep secret. But when it eats at you and causes the mental health issues that it did with me, you eventually get to a point where you have to. In fact, my therapist said to me, she says, your story seems to be so valid that, she says, it would be hard for me to even question you on the validity of it.
Well, no doubt, Mark. I've known you for a while, and there's no doubt in my mind that incidents like you're describing do indeed take place in the Watchtower Society. Now, the question that could be asked at this time is, how many pedophiles are there? We talked about one saying it's a pedophile paradise. In fact, it's been suggested there could be well over 23,000 pedophiles on file at the Watchtower World Headquarters. Now, here's a thought, Mark, that resonates through my line of thinking. You mentioned a little earlier that you're willing to speak up and talk about this.
Right.
Most people that are abused sexually keep it in the far depths of their mind. Mm-hmm. They prefer not to talk about it. But you're willing to come forward here and talk about it. And that's good. We appreciate that, because when people stay silent, sometimes people don't understand the problems in that religion. So,
well, see, Rick, not only do I want people to know what happened, but we're not looking at the entire ball here. Okay, at the ball of wax, if you want to call it that. Not just did I suffer from these molestations, I suffered from the mental anguish, the physical anguish, the spiritual anguish of being raised as a witness child. I got my rear end beaten in school for not saluting the flag. So what did I do to preserve myself? When I knew there were no witness kids around, I saluted the flag to stay out of trouble. I didn't feel like getting my rear end kicked across the schoolyard. Birthday parties, everything else. You actually, it forces a young person, and I see it today, I've seen it in my children, who aren't witnesses now but were, okay, that it's almost like a double life. You go to the Kingdom Hall, you suit and tie, you're all set. The minute you're out of that hall, you're what they call a worldly kid. But don't get caught.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up some things here that we all, for the most part, are familiar with. If you're a witness listening, you know that you cannot celebrate birthdays.
Salute the flag. You can't, and the thing is, you know what it's like to sit in the classroom all by yourself while all the other kids are having cake and soda? I mean,
it's difficult.
It's difficult, yeah.
It's difficult.
And then, and then when I got beat up, I was told, well, trust in Jehovah, he'll help you. Yeah. Jehovah didn't stop that guy from punching me in the eye or giving me a bloody nose. Jehovah didn't stop him, so. You try to reason that through a young kid's head. It's
very difficult.
Doesn't wash.
Now, Mark, do you think that the child molestation going on within the Watchtower Organization is as big of a problem as it would be like in the Catholic Church
I think it's worse than the Catholic Church, and the fact that here's why I respect the Catholic Church. They've admitted it. They're doing something about it. They're paying up on these lawsuits. The Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses deny that this problem exists. It's not a problem. They won't admit it. Okay, but I think it's worse because of that fact.
Right.
Maybe not number-wise, because there's how many millions of Catholics in the world, but with the witnesses, it's the ratio of how many pedophiles per witness. I mean, that's what you have to think of.
Well, I've heard the figures out there, Mark. Whether we can totally substantiate them or not is unknown. But studying this and doing research on the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's been suggested that for the most part, there's at least one or two pedophiles in every congregation. And, if I heard this when I was in the organization, I would have totally discounted it. But as I continue to research this organization and being involved here with Jehovah's Witness World News, information's coming forward all the time of pedophiles that are all over the world in this organization. In fact, just last week I talked to a young woman out in Seattle, Washington, and she claimed she was a Jehovah's Witness. She claimed she was actually raped at the age of 4 years old. And her name is Shanita, and she came on my radio program. And she was telling of how she was raped up until the age of 13 by a number of ministerial servants and elders. And the sad part about it, her father, while all of this was taking place, was serving in a high position with the Watchtower Organization. He was known as a circuit overseer, circuit servant. And today that man is still in good standing, and he is even in a higher position with the Watchtower. He is now a district overseer. So these are the things I hear. I talk with people all the time that are involved in these type of problems with the Watchtower Society. But Mark, when a young man or woman undergoes the trauma of being sexually molested, that's hard enough. But when you're being sexually molested in what they would call God's pure organization, that just adds a little more problem to the mix, doesn't it?
Oh, big time. Big time. You know what it does? It makes you act, it's made me, and I'm sure a lot of other people are like me that have gone through similar, because I'm not the only one. And I'm not claiming to be, because there's a lot of other people with war stories like this young girl you just mentioned. And what it does, it actually fosters lying or a charade in your life if you stay in the organization. Because you have to live that lie, but then in order to keep your sanity, you've got to, do what Jehovah's Witnesses wouldn't do.
Right.
If you follow where I'm trying to go from there, like as a teenager, you know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to date. I dated, but I made sure I didn't get caught.
Right.
I didn't go around in the territory of the congregation, so anybody would see me and say, oh, he was with a worldly girl. Because anybody who's not a witness is worldly.
Yeah, well, that's good that the audience gets to understand that, because Jehovah's Witnesses do have what we would call a closed society. They do things only as a group. You're not really supposed to work outside of that group, like you're saying, even when it comes to dating.
Right.
You're supposed to remain loyal to the organization, and not even as much as get involved in buying, I know this sounds crazy, even buying a box of Girl Scout cookies. We're going to be doing this program pretty much on a regular basis. You're going to learn a lot about what the Jehovah's Witnesses are hiding behind. You're going to get the other side of the story. And we always want to let individuals be aware of the fact, too, that you don't really know who we are for the most part. Where we're sitting here, we're talking about all of these things that goes on in the world of Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe you can challenge us. Maybe you're saying, that is all a bunch of baloney. Yeah, maybe you're sitting out there and you're falling off the edge of your couch. Maybe you believe everything being said here. I hope you do, because it's the truth. But if you don't, and you want to challenge us, by all means, you, as a Jehovah's Witness, or maybe one of your elders, circuit overseer, district overseer, governing body member, high officials of the Watchtower, we're open to a rebuttal. If
come on down.
Come on down, as we say. If for some reason you think that what we're saying is over the top and incorrect, well, come on down here and you can email us. You'll see the headings on the screen at the end of the program. You can get a hold of us and we'll make arrangements for that all to take place. Well, we were looking forward to more programming in the future, Mark, and we're certainly glad that Chelsea could be with us here today.
Thank you, Chelsea.
And the best is yet to come, Mark, and I hope that if you're a witness out there listening, please turn out the new light.